Rain poured down in heavy sheets, drumming mercilessly against the rusted tin roof of the old bus station on the edge of town. The street outside was flooded, muddy water swirling into small whirlpools around broken tiles and potholes. Commuters scurried past with umbrellas and plastic ponchos, their faces hidden behind layers of fabric, their strides quick and anxious, each one desperate to escape the sudden winter storm. At the corner of the station stood a cramped guard booth, its wooden door warped with age, the paint on the sign that read "Security" long since flaked away, leaving only faint white smudges on peeling green. Beneath the overhang, an elderly guard leaned on his broom, his thin body slightly hunched, every movement slow and deliberate. Deep crow's feet lined his tired eyes, his skin was darkened and rough from years of sun and wind, and tufts of uncombed gray hair peeked from under his cap. He wore a transparent plastic raincoat that had clearly seen better days, torn seams patched clumsily with strips of tape, edges frayed and uneven. Whenever someone passed close, the old man offered a polite nod, a faint, trembling smile. Most didn't notice, others gave only a cursory glance before hurrying on. He went back to sweeping puddles toward the gutter, though the rain was relentless, undoing his work the very moment he lifted the broom. Engines roared as buses came and went, their headlights flashing through curtains of rain. The air was thick with the smell of wet asphalt, diesel fumes, and the sharp metallic tang of cold water. Amid the restless tide of travelers, one figure stood out, a schoolgirl, no more than 13 or 14, slight of frame, clutching a bulging satchel over her head. Her uniform clung to her like a second skin, soaked through and plastered against her trembling body. Long strands of wet hair stuck to her pale cheeks, rivulets of water sliding down until they mingled with the redness in her eyes. She pressed forward against the crowd, hugging her bag tighter, her lips trembling as if she were biting back tears. Each step looked heavier than the last, weighed down not only by the sodden clothes but by the chill that had seeped deep into her bones. Around her, dozens of umbrellas and raincoats formed a wall of color, yet not one paused to shelter her. The guard stopped sweeping. His eyes lingered on the girl, narrowing slightly as if something about her struck a forgotten chord. Perhaps he saw himself in her, a child once left to fend off the world's storms alone. He watched her stumble, then saw the bag slip from her head. It fell with a thud, spilling notebooks and papers that instantly turned to mush in the rainwater. She knelt frantically, scooping up ruined pages with trembling hands. Her shoulders shook, her small frame crumpling under the weight of despair. The old man tightened his grip on his raincoat. It was the only protection he had for the long shift. Without it, he'd be soaked through in minutes, chilled to the marrow. For a brief moment, he hesitated. The storm roared around him, drowning out the quiet sigh that escaped his chest. And then he moved. He shuffled forward, bent low, and gently draped the torn raincoat over the girl's shoulders. The plastic sagged and leaked in places, but to her it was a wall against the icy downpour. Her eyes widened in shock. She turned, staring at the frail man who now stood in the full force of the rain, his shirt already clinging to his thin body, his face lined yet calm. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her voice quivering with gratitude. The guard only smiled, soft, almost imperceptible, and motioned with a rough, calloused hand toward the waiting buses. "Go, before you miss your ride." For a moment, time slowed. The crowd surged around them, the storm continued to pound the earth, but within that fragile circle of kindness, there was only the girl and the old man. She clutched the raincoat tighter, her eyes glistening not just from the rain but from something deeper, an unspoken promise to never forget. And then, carrying her battered satchel and the only shield she had, she slipped into the throng of passengers, her small figure swallowed by the crowd. The guard remained behind, his frail body exposed, the rain battering him harder now. Water streamed down his face, soaking his clothes, chilling his bones. Still, he stood there, broom in hand, silent, watching until the last trace of the girl vanished into the storm. The rain showed no sign of stopping. Droplets bounced off the guard's worn boots as he shifted his weight from one leg to the other, leaning on the wooden handle of his umbrella. The streets were thinning out, only the desperate or the forgotten remained outside in such weather. As Min adjusted the collar of his raincoat, his eyes caught a flicker of movement near the entrance of the alley beside the marketplace. At first, he thought it was just the wind tossing a piece of cardboard, but then he heard it, a faint cough, brittle and childlike. His instincts sharpened, pulling his gaze toward the sound. There, huddled beneath a sagging awning, were two children. Their clothes were soaked through, clinging to their small bodies. One of them, the younger boy, hugged his knees to his chest, shivering violently. The older girl tried to shield him with her thin jacket, but it was as useless as paper against the torrent. Min's heart clenched. He had seen many people in trouble during his long years as a night guard, but something about the sight of these children pierced deeper than usual. Perhaps it was the helplessness etched into their eyes, or the quiet resignation that they would endure the storm unseen, untouched. He approached slowly, careful not to startle them. "Are you two all right?" he asked, his voice gruff but gentle. The girl looked up, her face pale beneath strands of wet hair. She tightened her grip around the boy and hesitated before answering, "We're fine, sir." But the tremble in her voice betrayed the words. Min crouched down so that his eyes were level with theirs. "You don't look fine," he said. His raincoat draped around him like a shelter, drops rolling off its surface. For a brief moment, the children's gazes fixed on it, and Min understood. They longed for warmth, for dryness, for something as simple as relief. He remembered, unbidden, a night from decades past. He had been no older than these children, standing outside a factory gate in the rain, waiting for his father who never returned. The ache of abandonment, the chill of being forgotten, it all came rushing back. He blinked, steadying himself against the flood of memory. Without another word, Min unclasped his raincoat and swung it gently around the two children. The heavy fabric draped over their fragile shoulders like a fortress. The boy let out a surprised gasp, while the girl's lips parted, as if she couldn't quite believe a stranger would give away his only shield against the storm. "But, sir," she stammered, "you'll get wet." Min straightened, the rain now pelting against his shirt. "A little rain never hurt me," he said, forcing a small smile. "But you too, you need this more than I do." The boy peeked out from beneath the oversized coat, his teeth still chattering, but now his eyes held a spark of warmth. The girl pulled the coat tighter around them, whispering a quiet thank you. Min glanced around the market square. The stalls were shuttered, the lights dimmed. He knew he couldn't leave them there. Something deep inside told him that giving the coat wasn't enough. They needed more: shelter, food, safety. "You live nearby?" he asked softly. The girl's silence was the answer. She avoided his eyes, her fingers clenching at the fabric of the coat. Min recognized the truth instantly. Orphans. Nowhere to return. No one waiting. The realization hit him like the cold rain soaking through his shirt. He inhaled, steadying his breath. "Come with me," he said finally. "I'll take you somewhere dry." The children exchanged a glance, torn between fear of trusting a stranger and desperation to escape the storm. After a long pause, the girl gave a small nod. Min extended his hand, not commanding, but offering. Slowly, hesitantly, the girl placed her smaller, trembling hand in his. With the boy still clutched under the coat, they rose to their feet. Together, they stepped out from the shadows of the alley, into the curtain of rain. Min led them toward the small security booth at the edge of the market, the only place he could call his own. For the first time that night, despite the downpour, he felt a strange warmth spreading in his chest. A decision had been made, and he knew deep down, this storm would change more than just the weather. The security booth was hardly more than a box, 4 walls of peeling paint, a narrow cot pressed against one side, and a battered desk littered with old newspapers and a dented thermos. Yet, as Min pushed the door open and ushered the children inside, it felt to them like stepping into another world. The shift was immediate, the pounding rain muffled into a distant roar, the icy wind replaced by stillness. The girl pulled the boy closer as Min closed the door behind them, water dripping steadily from his shirt and hair. "Sit," Min said gently, pointing to the cot. His voice carried no authority now, only concern. The children hesitated before climbing onto the edge of the narrow bed. The boy curled into the blanket Min tossed over him, shivering subsiding as the warmth began to seep in. The girl sat upright, still watchful, her eyes following every movement Min made. Min moved to the desk and rummaged through the clutter. He found the small kettle he kept for long nights, filled it from a jug of water, and set it on the electric hot plate in the corner. The faint hum and glow of the coil brought a fragile comfort to the room. As the water began to heat, Min pulled off his soaked shirt, hanging it on a hook near the window. His chest bore the marks of years of labor, scars, weathered skin, the map of a man who had endured. He wrapped himself in an old sweater from the desk drawer and sat across from the children. "What are your names?" he asked softly. The girl hesitated, then said, "I'm Lon. This is my little brother, Bao." "Lon and Bao," Min repeated, nodding. "I'm Min." Lon gave the faintest of smiles, though her eyes never softened completely. Trust would not come easily. Bao, on the other hand, peeked out from the blanket, his curiosity already stirring. Min poured the boiling water into 3 chipped mugs, adding spoonfuls of instant noodles from a packet he kept for emergencies. The salty aroma filled the booth, warm and alive. He handed the first mug to Bao, who grasped it with both hands, steam clouding his face. Lon received hers with cautious gratitude. As they ate, the silence between them grew less heavy. The sound of slurping noodles, the sigh of relief, the faint crackle of the rain outside, it was as if the storm had been reduced to background noise, powerless against the fragile haven inside. "You've been out there long?" Min asked, breaking the quiet. Lon lowered her eyes. "Since morning. We tried to stay at the bus stop, but people told us to leave. We came here when the rain started." Min clenched his jaw, his chest tightening. He knew the cruelty of a world that had little space for the forgotten. His hand brushed against the rim of his mug, grounding him. "You did well to protect your brother," Min said, his voice low. "It's not easy." For the first time, Lan's guarded expression faltered. Her lips trembled, and she blinked hard, fighting back tears. She had been carrying the weight of survival for both of them, and the simple recognition nearly undid her. Bao, oblivious to the storm of emotion, looked up at Min and said through a mouthful of noodles, "You're like a hero." The words startled Min. He had never thought of himself as anything but ordinary, a tired guard, a man surviving one day at a time. Yet in Bao's wide eyes, he saw something else, the reflection of a protector, a figure of safety. Min chuckled softly, though his throat tightened. "Heroes don't wear raincoats," he said. "They wear capes." Bao grinned, and Lon allowed herself a small laugh, the sound like a crack of light in the dim booth. The night dragged on. Min found himself telling them small stories, about the stray cat that once tried to steal his lunch, about the time the market's power went out and he had to guard in the dark with only a flashlight. The children listened, their eyes brightening, the fear easing away bit by bit. When at last Bao's eyelids began to droop, Lon guided him to lie down fully on the cot. She tucked the blanket tight around him, then sat back against the wall, exhaustion pulling at her face. Min rose and fetched his old jacket, draping it over her shoulders. "Rest," he said. "You're safe here." Lon opened her mouth as if to argue, but the weight of fatigue won. Her eyes closed, her breathing evened out, and soon the siblings were lost to sleep. Min sat by the desk, watching over them as the rain continued its endless rhythm outside. The storm would pass eventually, but something told him the night had already changed everything. He had given away a coat. He had offered a meal. Yet in return, he had received something unexpected, an echo of belonging, a purpose he thought he'd left behind long ago. The storm lingered through the night, but by dawn the rain had softened into a misty drizzle. The market outside still slept, its stalls shuttered and streets glossed with puddles. Inside the booth, a pale light filtered through the small window, washing the room in muted gray. Min had barely slept. His chair was pulled close to the cot, arms folded across his chest, his eyes fixed on the children as though they might vanish if he looked away. Something in him stirred, an instinct he thought he had buried long ago, the memory of standing guard not just for buildings and goods, but for people, for fragile lives that depended on him. Bao was the first to stir. He blinked awake, hair sticking out in wild directions, cheeks still flushed from sleep. For a moment, confusion clouded his face, then recognition softened it. He whispered, "Mr. Min." "I'm here," Min replied, his voice low, steady. Bao smiled, a small, unguarded thing, before burrowing back into the blanket. It was Lon who rose next, her movements cautious, protective. She adjusted her brother's cover, then glanced toward Min with the same guarded suspicion, though softer than the night before. "You stayed awake all night?" she asked. Min shrugged. "Old habits. I'm used to keeping watch." Lon studied him for a moment, as if trying to measure the truth behind his words. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you." The words were barely audible, yet they struck Min deeper than he expected. He gave a small nod, brushing the gratitude aside though it lingered in his chest. He busied himself with the kettle again, brewing another round of weak tea and breaking open a half loaf of bread from the drawer. The children ate quietly, Bao humming softly between bites. Lon, however, kept glancing toward the window, tension pulling at her features. "What's on your mind?" Min asked. "They'll chase us away," she murmured. "When the market opens. People don't like kids like us hanging around." Min's jaw tightened. He had seen it himself, the way vendors waved them off, customers averted their eyes, the whispered words, nuisance, burden, thieves. He had stood by, powerless, because rules were rules. But now, with the two of them here, rules felt like chains. "They won't chase you while I'm here," Min said firmly. Lon blinked, startled by the conviction in his tone. For a fleeting moment, her shoulders eased, though the doubt didn't vanish completely. Trust was a luxury she had learned not to afford. The clock on the wall ticked toward 7. Already, faint sounds stirred outside, the clatter of carts, the murmur of early vendors. Min knew the quiet would soon be shattered. He glanced at the children, the fragile piece inside the booth, and wondered how long he could hold this shelter intact. As if on cue, a knock rattled the door. Min stiffened. Lan's hand instantly clutched Bao's. The boy's eyes widened, fear breaking through his drowsiness. "It's all right," Min said quickly, rising to his feet. "Stay here." He opened the door to find Nam, a younger guard from the other end of the market, rain still dripping from his cap. Nam grinned, oblivious to the tension inside. "Morning, old man," Nam said. "You look like you wrestled the storm all night." "Something like that," Min muttered. He shifted his stance, subtly blocking Nam's view of the cot behind him. Nam rubbed his hands together for warmth. "Big day ahead. Managers coming to inspect. Wants the place spotless. You know how he gets." Min nodded, his mind already racing. An inspection meant questions. Questions meant attention. And attention was the last thing he wanted for Lon and Bao. "Got it," Min said. "I'll handle my side." Naum gave a casual salute and wandered off, whistling. Min closed the door, leaning against it for a moment, the weight of the coming day pressing down. Lan's eyes met his when he turned back. They said everything she didn't voice. They'll find us. What happens then? Min exhaled slowly. He didn't have the answers yet, but for the first time in years, he felt the urgency to fight for something beyond himself. He knelt by the cot, his voice steady though his heart raced. Listen. No matter what happens, I won't let anyone harm you. Do you understand? Bao nodded instantly, eyes shining with belief. Lon hesitated, searching his face for cracks, for hesitation. She found none. Finally, she gave the smallest nod, a fragile pact sealed in silence. Outside, the market stirred awake, footsteps echoing, voices rising. Dawn had broken, and with it, the fragile line between secrecy and exposure. Min straightened, his eyes hardening with quiet resolve. He had sheltered them through the storm, but the real test was only beginning. By the time the clock struck 8, the market was alive with noise. The rain had thinned to a drizzle, and the street outside Min's booth filled with vendors raising metal shutters, calling out greetings, and unloading crates that clattered against the wet pavement. The air was heavy with the smell of damp produce, fried dough sizzling in oil, and the sharp tang of fish. From inside the booth, Lon peered through a crack in the curtain. Bao leaned close beside her, wide-eyed, fascinated by the bustle. For children who had lived on the edges, the market was both wonder and threat, a feast of colors and smells, but also a place where suspicion followed them like a shadow. Min watched them from the desk, his arms folded. He could see Lan's tension, the way her shoulders hunched as if bracing for impact. She knew what was coming. A loud voice rang outside. Min. You alive in there? It was Hoa, a vendor who sold fruit 2 stalls down. A sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, she was known for her quick tongue and quicker temper. Min opened the door a crack, stepping out before she could peek inside. I'm here, he said evenly. You look like a drowned dog, Hoa scoffed, eyeing his damp hair. Storm keep you busy? Something like that, Min replied. Hoa sniffed and waved a hand. Manager's making his round soon. If he catches anyone loitering, he'll throw a fit. Keep an eye out, yeah. Min nodded, his jaw tight. He knew her words were casual, but every syllable felt like a warning. He shut the door quickly, returning to find Lon staring at him, her eyes sharp with fear. They'll find us, she whispered. Not if you stay quiet, Min said. Trust me. But Lon shook her head, clutching Bao closer. We've been here before. People always find out. And when they do, she trailed off, her throat tightening. Min didn't press. He understood more than he wanted to admit. The sound of footsteps outside grew louder, measured, authoritative. Min stiffened. The manager. Mr. Kang was a man who carried himself like a general inspecting his troops. Tall, dressed in a pressed gray coat, he strode through the market with a ledger tucked under his arm, eyes darting left and right for anything out of place. Vendors straightened when he passed, plastering on smiles, though whispers followed in his wake. When his figure approached the guard booth, Min felt his pulse quicken. He straightened his posture, trying to look unbothered. Min, Kang said curtly, giving a quick nod. Any disturbances last night? No, sir, Min replied, voice steady. Kang's eyes flicked to the booth door. You stayed here through the storm? Yes. For a moment, Kang seemed satisfied. But then a faint sound carried from inside, a cough. A small, unmistakable cough. Min's stomach dropped. Kang's brows furrowed. What was that? Min forced a calm expression. The kettle. Steam rattles the lid sometimes. Kang's gaze lingered on him, skeptical. Finally, he grunted. Make sure the place is ready for inspection. No strays. You know the rules. Yes, sir. When Kang moved on, Min slipped back into the booth, closing the door with deliberate care. Lon was clutching Bao's hand tightly, her eyes wide with guilt. I'm sorry, Bao whispered. It's not your fault, Min said quickly, kneeling beside them. But you need to be quieter. Do you understand? They nodded, though the fear didn't leave their faces. Min exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. He could feel the walls closing in. The rest of the morning dragged with unease. Vendors bustled outside, customers haggled, coins clinked, but inside the booth the air was taut, every noise amplified by the risk of discovery. At midday, Min slipped out to patrol the perimeter, his mind restless. He passed Hoa's stall, catching her watching him closely. Her gaze flicked to the booth, then back to him, sharp as a blade. Min forced himself not to react. When he returned, Lon was standing at the window, Bao asleep on the cot. She turned to him, her expression torn between defiance and desperation. You can't keep us here, she said quietly. It's too dangerous. For us. For you. Min met her gaze. For a long moment, neither spoke. The truth was undeniable, every hour they stayed, the risk grew. Yet the thought of sending them back into the rain, into the streets that had already chewed them raw, was unbearable. Finally, Min spoke, his voice low but resolute. Then we'll find another way. Together. Lon blinked, startled by the certainty in his words. Something flickered in her eyes, doubt, hope, maybe both. Outside, the market pulsed with life, oblivious. But inside the booth, a choice had been made, quiet but irreversible. Min was no longer just a guard. He was a shield. And shields, once raised, did not lower easily. By afternoon, the drizzle had faded into a damp haze, leaving the market buzzing with full energy. Laughter, bargaining, the clang of metal pans, all collided into a noisy rhythm. To most, it was an ordinary day. But inside Min's booth, every sound outside pressed like a weight, a reminder that their secret was fragile, ready to split open. Bao had woken refreshed, nibbling on the last crumbs of bread. He played quietly with a stub of pencil Min found in a drawer, sketching crooked shapes on a scrap of paper. Lon, though, sat rigid by the window, her eyes scanning every passerby as if each one were a threat. Relax, Min murmured, pouring hot water into the kettle again. They're watching, Lon whispered. I saw the woman, fruit seller. She keeps looking here. Min didn't respond immediately. He had noticed Hoa's sharp gaze too. She wasn't unkind, exactly, but she was nosy, and nosiness could be just as dangerous. Moments later, a shadow crossed the booth door. Min stiffened. The door creaked open before he could react. Min. It was Hoa herself. She leaned against the frame, arms folded, eyes narrowed. What is it, Hoa? Min said, masking his unease. She sniffed. Strange noises earlier. Thought I heard, children. Min forced a chuckle. Children. Here. Maybe rats. Plenty of those around. Hoa's eyes flicked past him, toward the cot where Bao's pencil scribbles lay abandoned. Min moved subtly, blocking her view. You've been working here too long, Hoa said slowly. You get soft, you end up in trouble. Manager doesn't like strays. I know the rules, Min replied evenly. Hoa studied him for another beat before shrugging. Just looking out for you, old man. Don't want to see you lose your post. With that, she turned and melted back into the crowd. Min closed the door firmly, his hands tight on the handle. When he turned, Lan's face was pale. She knows, Lon whispered. She suspects, Min corrected. But suspicion is only smoke, not fire. Not yet. Lan's lips pressed into a hard line. People talk. They always talk. And when they do, we'll have nowhere left. Min crouched to her level, his voice steady. You're not alone anymore. I won't let them drive you back into the storm. Her eyes wavered, torn between disbelief and something she wanted desperately to trust. She looked away before she could answer. The rest of the afternoon crawled by. Bao grew restless, humming songs under his breath, his energy at odds with the tension in the air. Lon hushed him constantly, fear sharpening her tone. Min watched, a knot tightening in his chest. They were just children, why should silence and shadows be their only refuge? As dusk approached, Min left briefly to patrol again. Vendors lit small lamps at their stalls, casting the market in warm glows. He nodded to familiar faces, though unease gnawed at him. He felt Hoa's eyes trailing him once more, her expression unreadable. When he returned, he found Lon at the desk, hastily covering Bao's drawings. Her voice was urgent. We can't stay here tonight. Someone will notice. That woman will tell others. Min hesitated. She wasn't wrong. The booth, once a shelter, was becoming a cage. If suspicion spread, it would collapse. Then where? He asked. Lon faltered, her bravado slipping. I don't know. Min looked at the children, then at the thin raincoat still hanging by the door. He felt the weight of choice pressing down on him. Rules demanded distance. Compassion demanded risk. Finally, he spoke, his tone firm. We'll find a place safer than this. But until then, you stay close to me. Understand? Bao nodded instantly. Lon studied him, her lips parted, as though she couldn't quite believe the promise he was making. That night, as lamps flickered across the market and shadows lengthened, Min sat by the booth window, staring out into the restless crowd. He knew it was only a matter of time before whispers hardened into accusations. But he also knew this, once a shield is raised, lowering it is no longer an option. And Min, weary as he was, would stand. The market closed under a veil of shadows. Metal shutters slammed down one by one, stalls darkened, and voices thinned until only echoes remained. By the time the last vendor left, silence draped over the empty lanes like a heavy curtain. Inside the booth, Bao slept lightly, curled under the blanket, but Lon remained awake, her eyes sharp in the dim glow of a desk lamp. Min sat across from her, his weathered hands wrapped around a mug of cold tea. Neither spoke for a long while. Finally, Lon broke the silence. We can't stay. Not with her watching. Min nodded slowly. I know. He glanced at the raincoat by the door. The fabric still smelled faintly of last night's storm. It had been a shield once. Tonight, it would have to be again. He rose, gently waking Bao. The boy stirred, blinking sleepily. We're leaving, he mumbled. Yes, Min said softly. We need to find someplace safer. He draped the raincoat over the boy's small frame, pulling the hood snug. Then he gestured for Lon to follow. Together, they slipped into the night, the market now a skeleton of itself, silent stalls, litter scattered by the wind, puddles glinting under pale lamps. Lon clutched Bao's hand tightly as they followed Min down the narrow alleyways that wound behind the market. He moved with practiced ease, knowing every hidden turn, every shadow that could swallow them whole. Where are we going? Lon whispered. There's an old storeroom near the east gate, Min said. No one uses it anymore. It'll keep you safe for the night. Lon frowned but said nothing. She had learned to weigh promises, to hold hope lightly. As they turned a corner, footsteps echoed behind them. Min froze, motioning the children against the wall. A figure appeared, Hoa, the fruit vendor, carrying a lantern. Her sharp eyes caught them instantly. Min, she called. Out late, aren't you? Min's body tensed. Just making rounds, he said smoothly. Her gaze flicked to the children. And them. Lon gripped Bao tighter, her pulse quickening. Bao hid his face in the hood, trembling. Min stepped forward, blocking Hoa's view. They're with me. Strays. Her voice cut like glass. The manager won't be pleased. Leave it, Hoa, Min said quietly, though steel threaded his tone. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Then Hoa sighed, shaking her head. You'll get yourself dismissed, old man. But, it's not my business tonight. She turned and disappeared into the darkness, her lantern bobbing like a fading star. Lon exhaled shakily. She'll tell. Maybe, Min admitted. But not tonight. They pressed on, the children's footsteps soft against the wet ground. Finally, they reached the storeroom, a forgotten shed of rusted metal and cracked wood, tucked behind a tangle of weeds. Min forced the door open with a groan, the smell of dust and dampness wafting out. Inside, the air was cold but dry. Broken crates lined the walls, and spiderwebs clung to corners, but it was shelter. Min spread an old tarp on the floor, motioning for the children to sit. Bao immediately curled into Lan's side, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Lon, however, stayed alert, her gaze fixed on Min. Why are you helping us? She asked suddenly. The question cut through the silence. Min paused, staring at his calloused hands. Memories flickered, faces long gone, mistakes carved deep. Because once, he said slowly, someone helped me. And they never repaid it. Lon studied him, searching for lies, but found none. Her shoulders softened just a fraction. As the night deepened, Bao drifted into sleep, his small breath steady. Lon eventually leaned back against the wall, fatigue pulling at her. Min remained awake, seated near the door, the raincoat draped across his knees. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the fragile refuge hidden within the broken shed. But inside, for the first time in years, Min felt something stir in his chest, not just duty, not just pity, but the faint, stubborn flicker of purpose. He would guard them. Through suspicion, through danger, through storms yet to come. And he knew, as he listened to the children's breathing, that his life had already begun to change in ways he couldn't turn back from. Dawn crept into the city like a cautious visitor, spilling pale light across the market. Vendors shuffled in, unlocking stalls, stacking fruit, and dragging tarps from crates. The air filled with the metallic clatter of shutters, the earthy smell of vegetables, and the chatter of early customers. But beneath the hum of commerce, whispers traveled quickly, like smoke curling through unseen cracks. Did you hear? Min was seen with 2 children last night. They say they were orphans. Street kids. Imagine that, he brought them inside the grounds. By the time the sun rose higher, the rumor had grown claws. Some said the children were thieves, others swore they carried sickness. A few muttered about curses, about how misfortune always followed the unwanted. Min felt the shift the moment he stepped into the main aisle. Vendors who had once nodded warmly now avoided his eyes. Conversations halted when he passed. A woman selling fish crossed her arms, staring at him as if weighing whether to speak. Lon sensed it too. From where she sat tucked in the storeroom doorway with Bao, she caught fragments of voices. Her stomach knotted. She had known this would happen. Wherever they went, suspicion followed. Bao, oblivious, played quietly with a chipped bottle cap, spinning it across the floor. "When can we go outside?" he asked. "Not yet," Lon said quickly, glancing at the alley. "Stay here." Min returned with a loaf of bread and a thermos of weak tea. He set them down, his face drawn. "Eat," he told them, but his voice lacked its usual firmness. Lon studied him. "They know, don't they?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he tore the bread into pieces, handing them out with mechanical care. Finally, he said, "Yes. The market talks fast." "What will they do?" Lon pressed. Min looked at her, his expression heavy. "They'll test me. See how far I'll go." That test came sooner than he expected. By mid-morning, the market manager arrived, a stout man in a crisp shirt, his gold watch glinting. 2 assistants trailed him like shadows. He strode straight toward Min, his eyes sharp. "Guardian," the manager said coldly. "A word." Min straightened. "Yes, sir." "You've been seen harboring children," the man said, voice carrying enough for nearby vendors to hear. "Explain yourself." Min's jaw tightened. They needed shelter from the storm. "A storm passes," the manager snapped. "But strays linger. They bring trouble. Theft. Disease. The market cannot afford such liabilities." Lon bristled, stepping half into view, but Min raised a hand subtly, holding her back. His gaze never left the manager's. "They're not trouble," Min said evenly. "Just children." The assistants exchanged uneasy glances. The crowd thickened, vendors pretending to busy themselves while straining to hear. The manager's lips curved into something between a sneer and a smile. "You've always been dutiful, Min. Reliable. But perhaps age has softened your judgment." Min's fingers curled against his side. For years he had obeyed every rule, guarded every gate, absorbed every insult in silence. But looking at Bao's frightened face peeking from behind Lon, something shifted in him. "They stay," Min said quietly, but firmly. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. The manager's face darkened. "Think carefully. Defy me, and you risk your position. Your roof. Your livelihood." Min took a breath. He could feel his heart pounding, the weight of decades pressing against this single moment. "I've thought carefully," he said. "And I won't throw them back to the streets." For a long second, silence reigned. Then the manager turned sharply, gesturing for his assistants to follow. "Very well," he said, his tone clipped. "But remember, Min, every choice has consequences." He walked away, his footsteps like hammer blows. The crowd slowly dispersed, murmuring. Some shook their heads, others cast furtive glances at Lon and Bao. Lon rushed to Min's side, her voice low. "Why did you say that? Now they'll come for us." Min placed a hand on her shoulder, steady despite the storm inside him. "Because it was the truth." Bao tugged at the raincoat draped over Min's arm, his small voice breaking the tension. "Are we in trouble?" Min knelt, pulling the boy close. "Maybe," he admitted softly. "But I'm here. As long as I stand, you're not alone." Lan's throat tightened. For the first time since their parents were gone, she felt the edge of safety, not in walls or roofs, but in the quiet conviction of this weary guard. Yet as the sun climbed and the market thrummed louder, she couldn't shake the unease in her chest. The whispers had not ended. They had only just begun. The days that followed were heavy with suspicion. Min could feel it in the way footsteps slowed when he walked past, in the way conversations died abruptly at the sight of him. The market, once a place of routine and order, had become a maze of watching eyes. Lon noticed it too. When she ventured out briefly to fetch water, she heard the whispers sharpen. They'll bleed him dry. He's lost his mind, caring for strays. Mark my words, they'll bring ruin here. She hurried back to the storeroom, her hands trembling as she passed the jug to Bao. The boy tilted it to drink, unaware of the shadows closing in. That night, Min sat alone by the gate, the raincoat draped across his knees. He stroked the worn fabric absently, listening to the quiet hum of the market after hours. In his mind, he replayed the manager's warning, every choice has consequences. He had made his choice. Now he braced for its cost. The cost came in small cruelties at first. One morning, Bao reached for an apple left on a crate, only for the vendor to snatch it away with a glare. Not for thieves, the man spat. Lon offered to help sweep a stall in thanks for scraps of bread, but the woman waved her off coldly. We don't need your kind. By midday, the children huddled in the storeroom, their stomachs hollow. Min returned with a few bruised bananas hidden in his coat, his jaw clenched. He had paid double for them. Lon pressed the fruit into Bao's hands, but her eyes burned with anger. Why do they hate us? She whispered. Min had no answer. He only knew that hatred grew quickest where fear was planted. But the market's hostility didn't stop at cold shoulders. One evening, Min discovered a pile of broken glass scattered across the alley near the storeroom. Another time, he found the lock on the water tap twisted shut with wire. Small acts of sabotage, meant to drive them out. Lon grew restless, her spirit fierce. We can't keep hiding, she told Min. They'll keep pushing until... Until what? Min interrupted, his voice low but firm. Until you're forced back onto the streets. Until Bao starves. She stared at him, startled by the steel in his tone. For the first time, she realized how much weight he carried alone. One night, the breaking point arrived. It began with a cry from Bao. He had slipped outside to chase a stray dog wagging its tail near the market square. By the time Lon reached him, 3 older boys, sons of vendors, had cornered him. Street rat, one sneered, shoving Bao backward. Bet he's the reason things go missing, another taunted. Teach him a lesson, the third urged. Bao stumbled, his small body no match for their jeers and jabs. His eyes darted desperately toward Lon. Stop it, she shouted, running forward. But before she could reach them, Min's voice thundered across the square. Enough. He strode in, his figure cutting through the gathering crowd. The boys froze as the old guard loomed, raincoat draped across his shoulders like a banner. His eyes blazed, not with rage, but with an unshakable authority forged from years of silent endurance. Go home, Min ordered. The boys muttered excuses, retreating under the weight of his stare. The crowd lingered, murmuring, some curious, some disapproving. Min crouched beside Bao, checking his scraped knee. The boy sniffled, clinging to him. You're safe, Min said softly, though his own heart hammered. He looked up at Lon, whose fists trembled with fury. They won't stop, she whispered. They'll keep coming. Min stood, facing the onlookers. His voice rang steady across the square. These children are under my protection, he declared. Anyone who harms them answers to me. The crowd rippled with unease. Some scoffed, some looked away, but a few, just a few, shifted with uncertainty, as though a seed of doubt had been planted. Lon stared at Min, her chest tight. In that moment, he wasn't just a guard at a market gate. He was a wall against the world. But walls, she knew, could be battered until they cracked. That night, as Bao slept curled in the raincoat, Lon whispered to Min in the darkness. You can't shield us forever. Min didn't reply. He sat in silence, eyes fixed on the shadowed beams above, listening to the distant murmur of the market that had once trusted him. He had drawn a line, and now the storm gathered on the other side. The storm did not wait long. It gathered quickly, like clouds over a parched field, thick and threatening. By the end of the week, the market manager called a meeting in the central square. Vendors left their stalls, customers thinned, and soon the space was crowded with wary faces. Min stood at the edge, hands clasped behind his back, raincoat draped over one arm. Lawn and Bao stayed hidden in the storeroom, but their hearts thudded as they listened to the rising voices drifting through the thin wooden door. The manager's voice carried like a gavel. This market has thrived for years because of order, because of discipline. But now, he paused for effect, sweeping his gaze toward where Min stood. Now that order is threatened. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, others shifted uneasily. The manager raised his hand. One man has decided his compassion outweighs our rules. He shelters strays, risks our safety, our livelihood. What happens when more come? What happens when theft spreads, or disease? Will you all pay the price for his weakness? The crowd's unease hardened into anger. Cries rose. He's right. We can't let them stay. Send them out. Min stepped forward. His voice, though quieter, cut through the noise. They are children. Nothing more. They mean no harm. But the manager seized on his words. Children. Or bait for others. How long before gangs see this as an opening? This is not kindness, it is recklessness. The assistants flanked him, their posture rigid, their expressions rehearsed. It was clear this was not debate, it was trial. One vendor, an elderly woman with lines carved deep into her face, spoke hesitantly. Min has guarded us for years. Never once failed his post. Perhaps we should. Her words were drowned out by jeers. He's blinded. He's endangering us. The manager pressed forward. I will be plain. Min must choose, abandon the strays, or abandon his post. One or the other. The declaration silenced the square. All eyes turned to Min. For a moment, the world seemed to still. He could hear the creak of a wooden sign swaying, the distant cry of a hawker trying to salvage a sale, the pounding of his own heart. He thought of the years spent guarding these gates. The long nights in rain and cold, the countless times he stood silent so others could sleep in peace. He thought of the market he had served faithfully, and of the two children waiting behind the storeroom door, fragile, scared, clinging to him as their only anchor. His choice was clear, though it tore at him like a blade. I cannot turn them away, Min said, his voice steady. If that costs me my post, so be it. Gasps and shouts erupted. The manager's face tightened in triumph. So be it indeed. From this moment, Min is relieved of duty. His gate, his quarters, reassigned. A murmur of approval swelled. Some faces looked satisfied, others uneasy, but none moved to defend him. Min lowered his head, absorbing the weight of the sentence. The raincoat slipped slightly from his arm, its hem brushing the ground. For years it had been part of his uniform, his shield against storm and night. Now it was only cloth. He turned and walked away, the crowd parting reluctantly. Some spat, others whispered, but a few simply watched in silence, guilt flickering in their eyes. Back at the storeroom, Lon met him with wide, searching eyes. What happened? Min placed the raincoat gently around Bao's shoulders. We can't stay here anymore. Lan's throat closed. They cast you out. Yes. His voice was calm, almost too calm. But I will not regret it. Tears stung her eyes, but she forced them back. Where will we go? Min looked out at the market that had been his home, his duty, his world. For the first time in decades, he had no answer. Yet as Bao clutched the oversized raincoat, and Lon stood defiant beside him, Min felt something stir within, an ember that had long been buried under years of obedience. He had lost his place, his roof, his certainty. But in their eyes, he saw something stronger than fear. He saw a reason to fight. The night after their expulsion was the coldest yet. The market, once alive with lights and chatter, now loomed like a fortress with barred gates. Min, Lon, and Bao stood outside its boundary, three shadows cast by a street lamp that buzzed faintly overhead. "Where do we go?" Lon asked, hugging herself. Her voice carried both fear and defiance. Min scanned the narrow alleys beyond the square. He had patrolled these streets for years, but tonight they seemed foreign, hostile. "We find shelter," he said simply. They wandered through the city's arteries, past shuttered shops and crumbling walls. Bao clung to Min's hand, the oversized raincoat trailing like a shadow. The boy stumbled often, weary from the day's turmoil, but each time Min lifted him gently and kept walking. At last, they found a derelict warehouse near the river. Its roof sagged, and broken windows gaped like missing teeth, but it offered walls against the wind. Inside, the air smelled of rust and damp wood. Rats scurried, startled by their intrusion. Lon wrinkled her nose but said nothing. She spread a piece of cardboard for Bao to lie on, then sat beside him, pulling the raincoat over them both. Min leaned against a beam, his body aching from exhaustion, his mind heavier still. In the silence, memories pressed in, the years of service, the loyalty to the market, the trust he thought unshakable. All gone in a single decision. Yet when he glanced at the children huddled together, something inside him steadied. Lon broke the silence. "You gave up everything for us." "I gave up a post," Min corrected softly. "Not everything. But now we're nothing," she said bitterly. "Just beggars in the street." Min's gaze hardened. "You are not nothing. Don't let them decide what you are." Bao stirred, half asleep, and murmured, "Min will protect us." Then he drifted back into dreams. Lon blinked back tears, ashamed of her own doubt. She whispered, "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," Min said firmly. "You're the reason I finally remembered who I am." The rain began again, tapping against the broken windows. The sound was steady, almost soothing, but it seeped into the warehouse, chilling the air. Min wrapped his arms around the beam, forcing himself to stay awake, to guard them even now. Morning brought hunger. They had no bread, no tea, nothing. Bao whimpered softly, his stomach growling. Lon bit her lip, scanning the empty street beyond the warehouse. "We need food," she said. Min nodded. "Stay here. I'll go." Lon grabbed his sleeve. "No. They'll turn you away. Or worse." But Min gently pried her hand free. "I've been turned away before. It won't kill me." He stepped into the street, the raincoat still draped around Bao's small frame. Without it, Min felt exposed, but he didn't look back. At the market, people noticed him immediately. Conversation stopped. Vendors stiffened. One man muttered, "Look who crawled back." Min ignored them, walking to a fruit stall. He pulled a few crumpled bills from his pocket. "3 apples," he said. The vendor smirked. "Double price for you." Min paid without protest, taking the bruised fruit. He turned to leave, but the manager's voice cut across the square. "Guardian." Min froze. Slowly, he faced the man who had cast him out. "You don't belong here anymore," the manager said. "Take your strays and vanish before worse follows." Min met his gaze. "I'm not here to fight. Just to feed them." The manager stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think you're noble. But you've doomed yourself and them. Kindness doesn't keep people alive. Rules do. Min said nothing. He walked away, apples heavy in his hand. Back at the warehouse, Bao's face lit up at the sight of fruit. He bit eagerly, juice running down his chin. Lon ate quietly, watching Min with new eyes. You stood there, she said softly. You didn't bow. Not anymore. Min looked at her, weary but resolute. I bowed my whole life. That ended when you knocked on my gate. Lan's throat tightened. For the first time since her parents' death, she felt a spark of hope. Yet outside, the city stirred with rumor. Word spread quickly, the disgraced guard still sheltered orphans, still defied the market. And where rumor spread, danger followed. Min knew the storm had not ended. It was only beginning to crest. The city woke restless that morning. Clouds pressed low, heavy with rain, and the air tasted of iron. In the marketplace, tension snapped like taut wire. Rumors had spread, the disgraced guard was still nearby, hiding in the warehouse with the orphans. Some vendors feared bad luck, others feared thieves, and the manager fanned those fears into fire. By midday, a crowd marched toward the riverfront. Torches sputtered in the damp air, voices rose in chants. Drive them out. Protect the market. Lon heard the roar before she saw the glow. She clutched Bao tightly, heart hammering. They're coming. Min stood by the warehouse door, shoulders squared. He had no weapon, no shield, only his resolve. He looked back at the children, his gaze steady despite the storm outside. Stay behind me, he said. The mob arrived in a wave of noise and light. The manager strode at the front, smugness etched into his features. There, he shouted, pointing at the warehouse. There lies the source of our ruin. Cries erupted. Stones clattered against the walls. Min stepped forward, his figure framed in the doorway. The rain began at last, falling in hard, cold sheets, soaking him to the bone. Enough, he said, his voice carrying across the mob. Laughter answered him. You have no authority, someone jeered. You're nothing, another spat. Min's eyes blazed. I was your guard for 30 years. I kept thieves at bay, stood in storms, bled for your safety. And this is how you repay loyalty. By turning on children who have done you no harm. The crowd wavered, some faces faltering, but the manager barked, don't be fooled. He hides behind sentiment. Compassion weakens us. Lon, trembling, pushed past Min to stand beside him. We are not disease. We are not thieves. We are people. If you cast us out, then remember, you are not losing us. You are losing yourselves. The words struck like sparks, but the crowd's anger was not easily quenched. A man hurled a stone. It grazed Lan's arm, she gasped, stumbling. Min moved without thought. He wrapped the raincoat around her shoulders, shielding her, and raised his voice one final time. If you strike them, you strike me. If you call them cursed, then curse me too. But understand this, cruelty is not strength. It is cowardice. For a heartbeat, silence fell, broken only by the rain. Then Bao, clutching the edge of the raincoat, stepped forward. His small voice carried, trembling but clear, he saved us. He's our family now. Something shifted. The mob's fury cracked. A few lowered their torches. The elderly woman from the market stepped forward, her voice breaking. Min is right. We owe him more than this. Others hesitated, shame flickering in their eyes. But the manager's face twisted in rage. Fools! You'll regret this. Before he could finish, a shout rose from the back. Enough, manager. We've listened too long to fear. The crowd turned, anger scattering like leaves in the rain. The torches hissed out one by one. Slowly, people drifted away, some muttering, others silent. The manager, pale with fury, was left standing alone. He glared at Min. "This isn't over," he hissed. But no one followed him. Min lowered his head, exhaustion washing over him. His clothes clung heavy, his breath came ragged. The children clung to him, the raincoat binding them together like a second skin. When the last footsteps faded, Lon looked up at him, eyes shining. "You stood for us." Min gave a weary smile. "No. I stood for what's right. That's all I ever wanted to guard." They returned to the warehouse, not triumphant, but together. The city had not welcomed them, but neither had it broken them. And in the dim light, as Bao curled against his side and Lon draped the raincoat over all three of them, Min realized something profound. For years, he had been a guardian of gates, of walls, of rules. But that night, soaked and weary, he understood, his true duty was never to doors or markets. It was to people. To lives fragile but worth protecting. The storm outside raged on, but within that fragile shelter, a quiet warmth grew, stronger than fear, stronger than exile. And in the rhythm of the rain, Min heard it at last, not an ending, but a beginning.